thank you guys so much. I'm with Amy and Steve and Trey. Just met Amy and Steve and Trey for the first time. Welcome, family. I'm so glad you're here. You made the trip from Holman this morning.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
You know what we're here for? I mean, we're happy you guys are here, but we want to find out about Trey,
Yes.
is what we want to find out about. He's going to be our star of the day, okay? So, Trey's story, why don't you start? He's not feeling good.
So at the start of May, Trey went in for a simple, what we thought was ear infection. Every day seemed to get worse and worse. He was put on antibiotics. They said it cleared up. We waited like another week. We went back in. He had another ear infection. And then he seemed to be doing better. So he was his normal self, running around, playing, loved to be outside. And then one morning he just didn't have any energy, played 2 hours and slept most of the day. Every day just kept getting worse and worse. He would just sleep more and more.
Was that your red flag?
Yep. So then I think it was Sunday morning we woke up and I'm like, he's just not himself. I'm going to take him in. He just wasn't normal Trey. So we waited outside for urgent care to open up.
Oh, you were standing outside the door waiting?
Yep, we were the first ones outside waiting. I had Trey, he was just limp over my shoulder.
So you knew
I
something
knew.
was up.
Yep. So from there we went in, they gave him IVs to get his fluids back up because he was really dehydrated. He had no energy to even drink water.
How was that watching Trey get an IV? That scare you a little bit?
It was scary, yep. Yep. At first they didn't do an IV, they just wanted it natural, so they kept syringing water in his mouth. It took about 2 hours just to syringe the water in his mouth for him to even move or have a wet diaper at all. So from there, they sent us back home and they had us follow up the next morning at Peds with his normal doctor, Dr. Nike. From there, we got him in right away in the morning, so he was his first child of the morning. He kind of looked at Trey, and I think he knew something was the matter, but he didn't know quite what was the matter. So they figured it was from the ear infection, and they started steroid shots in his legs, hoping that would cure what they believed Trey had was a really bad ear infection. So we went back home. Trey slept a lot that day and still wasn't himself. He did have a peak of energy where he was running around.
So did you think, okay,
Yeah,
those shots did it?
Yeah,
Yep.
we thought the shots were the answer, and it was supposed to be 3 shots in a row. So we thought by day 3, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have our normal baby back. Well, by that afternoon, he was limp Trey again, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, back to his normal sleepy self. So from there, we just kind of let Trey do his own thing, kept checking on him. I knew a sick baby just needed sleep, so we just figured it was an ear infection and he needed sleep. He struggled to eat anything, which was not Trey. So day 2, we went into the hospital to get the second dose of shots. I was expecting after these shots, Trey was going to jump up and start walking, wanting outside, doing his normal thing. Well, that night, Trey developed a rash from his shots. He does have some allergies, so he broke out in a little bit of hives, so we were kind of worried about that. Well, then when we got home, he vomited, which appeared to be blood, and he urinated blood, so I knew something was not
Really
right.
Not right.
Yeah. So we just kind of held out that day, stayed at home with them. So day 3, we went in to Dr. Nike. A bunch of other pediatricians came in the room to look at Trey. Nobody really said too much. They just had puzzled looks to them. So from there, he said he was going to admit Trey to the hospital, which was hard. But we knew it was right. He was still limp Trey, couldn't hold his head up, couldn't play, couldn't drink.
Where does Grandma, your mom's idea, come into play here?
That was in the hospital. She mentioned my sister when she was really young, she had meningitis. And so my mom asked if it could be meningitis at all. And the doctor said no. That children this age don't get meningitis. To all of our surprises, they did a spinal tap 3 days later of Trey being in the hospital. He kept having high fevers that wouldn't go away.
Let me jump in here. Steve, Daddy Steve,
Yes. Yes.
you were in the room when the spinal tap took place?
Yep. It was Friday, and there was no way Amy was going to be in the room. If she is in the room, she would have passed out. So I was in there with Trey. Luckily, I couldn't see the needle going in him. I just held on to Trey's hand. But that was scary.
Very scary. And scary for you because you're outside the door.
Yep, and I could hear everything. They were in the small operating room next door, and I could hear Trey crying. I could hear everything.
What did that do to you?
It was really hard to sit there and listen to that. I knew that Trey needed help because he was not himself, but at the same point, I wanted to be there to help comfort him. Luckily, Grandma sat with him a majority of the time. She was always there for us.
So did the spinal tap show what happened after the test?
So they said the test would be about an hour, and the test usually comes back clear if there is no infection or anything. And Trey's did come back clear, so right away we had hopes that it wasn't meningitis. So we immediately jumped to what it could be next
Right.
if it wasn't meningitis.
Sure.
About 40 minutes later, all these doctors and everybody came in the room, and they just had blank stares on, and they're like, we have some good news, but we also have some bad news. The good news is we finally knew what was the matter with Trey and what Trey had. The bad news is he does have meningitis and a blood infection.
What did you think? What happened?
I think
Were
we
you
had
able to process it? Were you?
It was hard.
Yeah.
We had some relief knowing that we were on the right steps to help get Trey better, but at the same point, we were worried about him. Knowing what meningitis can do, it has a lot of effects on children. You worry about brain damage and hearing, and he wasn't walking at all, so we worried that he was going to degress and not be able to walk and all those things.
So when your baby is admitted to the hospital with meningitis, what is the protocol? What happens?
It was hard just starting a new job 6 months prior to.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't really have any PTO, so luckily we knew one of us had to go to work.
So Steve, you went to work. Was
Yep.
it tough?
It was tough.
Was it tough leaving at the hospital?
Toughest was before we knew anything, having to work and not having any updates.
Trying to keep your mind on your job
that was
and what
really
you're
tough.
doing. Okay.
Almost impossible to do.
It must have been. And Amy, for you, and I'm sorry this is just so raw, and I know that. So how many days did you spend in the hospital?
I stayed with Trey for 10 days in the hospital, and then the weeks leading up to, I was in and out of work just with his fever and knowing that he had an ear infection, and I couldn't send him to daycare like that.
When you were in the hospital room with Trey, you really were in the hospital room with Trey. You couldn't go down the hall. You couldn't visit. You felt a little isolated?
Yep, we were stuck in the room for the first probably 4 days. We weren't able to leave at all because his fever. Once his fever broke, we were able to leave the room, which was so nice. We went to the child life specialist. They have a little room with a bunch of toys and stuff, so it was nice being able to get out of the room.
It's a little freedom.
Yeah, Trey loved, they had a little push red car that he loved to ride in the halls and see everybody and say hi to them all.
You know, comforts of home, you forget about it until you need it. Because I know what you guys were doing. I know you were bringing coolers with ice because you had your lunches that you brought with you. And what amazing little thing happened in your room?
We were out for a walk one day and somebody mentioned something about getting a refrigerator in our room, which was so nice. Once we got the refrigerator, my mom actually went to the grocery store and brought us in stuff for sandwiches and stuff, which was really helpful. Throughout the day when both Steve and my mom were working, then I was able to have lunch when Trey was sleeping. They also gave us food vouchers, which were nice. So we used those a lot at night, $5 food vouchers, which were very helpful.
Well, and you guys could have a meal together.
Yep.
How's Trey doing now? Where are we at?
Trey's doing really well.
He looks great to me.
Can you say hi?
Hi, sweetheart.
Say hi.
Hi.
He did have 2 hearing tests.
Uh-huh.
The first one they didn't do so well at.
Oh.
But the second one, we just changed the timing to a different time, hoping that it wasn't nap time. So
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
that would help. The second one did come out great. We just had his 2-year appointment, and everything looks good. They were surprised with his development and how far along he's came.
You guys have been through a lot. You've all been through a lot. Children's Miracle Network came to your rescue, and you had already known about the organization, or was it new?
I know Heather, and she does.
That's your
CMN.
connection.
Yep, Heather's
your
my
connection.
connection. I used to take care of Heather's kids, so we have known each other for a few years just for that.
Heather told me a little story about how she really met you one of the first times and put a name and face together. And apparently you were on your break, and you were taking care of the kids. You were on your break, and you were out walking one of her little ones. Yeah. And she wanted to find out who would spend their break taking care of her little ones. Yeah, and that was you.
Yep.
That was you, and you've been friends ever since.
Yep.
So people are waiting on a Saturday morning, trying to figure out what to do, sitting at home, 781-1477, trying to decide if you're going to make a pledge or not. What would you tell them?
Do it. It's really helpful. Right now when the kids are in the hospital, they're able to, Trey was given a Dalmatian puppy right away, and that just helped him. To this day, he still likes the Dalmatian puppy in his bed.
Is it well loved?
Yeah, it was like
How many
his
times has it
security
been in the wash
blanket.
machine? Quite a few times?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we know.
Yeah, even the toys that they give to the hospital for Trey to be able to play with and bring to his room was really helpful.
Well, you know what? You guys are very popular. While we've been talking and visiting and finding out about Trey, the phones have been ringing like crazy. How many calls? We have 13 calls.
Wow.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I was thinking, you know what? Maybe we should shoot for 10. Well, we're over that, so I think we'll just keep shooting and see what happens here. 781-1477. Tearing up, you know, going back.
Yep, it's
It's
hard
hard.
to think
It's
of.
hard.
Yep.
Yes.
And Dad, you know, it got you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when we're talking about you having to go back and do normal life stuff when you want to be
Oh,
here.
Yeah, that's very, very tough. Like when everybody else is in the hospital and I'm not around with them, yeah, that's very difficult.
And keeping your mind on what you need to keep your mind on. You know,
Yeah.
that's not easy. And nobody expects anything to happen to you. You don't expect it.
Nope, you
And
don't
when
think
these
about
things
it.
come up, that's why, you know, having a safety net like Children's Miracle Network hospitals, taking care of our families around here. We've had family this morning. We started out in Bangor. Now we're in Holman. You know, I don't know what's happening next hour, but we'll find out soon. But these are families around us that we're being able to help out with pledges that are coming in. And we've got a busy day ahead of us. We're going to keep taking calls. It's 781-1477, 1-800-853-6889. You guys are amazing. Thanks for coming in. I'm glad we had a little breakfast for you this morning. Amy, is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so.
We're
Just
ready to
thank
make
you
it a
for
great
all
day.
the help. We couldn't have done it without all the help.
Was it kind of hard asking for help?
It was very hard.
Hard accepting it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always just think that people need it more than you.
Yeah. But you know what? We're here for you. Sorry about the tears, but thank you for digging deep and sharing your story. You're listening to the Children's Miracle Network Radiothon, a service of the La Crosse Radio Group.